Hopefully everyone by now has downloaded the Picasa software through Google and done a little bit of self-exploration with it. On my Mac, this is what the software looks like. You'll see all the folders on the left-hand side of different events with photos, and then of course in the center you'll see all the thumbnails that have imported. And my version of Picasa auto imports the photos from my computer, or you can tell it to manually import. And on the top left here, you would click on Import, and import from, if you have a card reader or a built-in card reader, you would be able to select that to import from your camera. Or if the photos are already on your computer, you could tell it exactly the location where those would come from. So on the left-hand side here, all the thumbnails of as many as you select will come up, and then you can highlight them. And mine here has an X, but you can just take away that X. And you would, on the bottom left here, import to, and again, you would tell it exactly where you wanted it to go. If you're bringing it from a camera or something, then you would tell it if you want to put it on your desktop and make a new folder, or if you already have a pictures folder. And then from there, you would tell it to import the selected or import all. Okay, so we'll go back to our library. Okay, so the library is a great place to view a lot of photos at once and organize them if you want to use the Picasa software for that. You can use this slider. Slide it to the left to make your thumbnails smaller and see a lot more. Of course, to the right to see less of them. In the People tab, you can select people from images and add a name, the same as on Facebook. So when you're searching for specific people, you could tag them and then later search for people, and you can find photos of them if you want to do that. The same thing with places. You could tell where a photograph was taken. So if you want to find all the photographs that were taken in Helen, Georgia, you could write Helen and then all those photos would come up. You can also tag photos. So if you wanted to highlight a few of them, if you hold Shift and then click, it'll highlight a bunch in a row, or you can do individually Command or Control, and then you could add tags. So I could say for instance, this one was gallery or gallery opening. It was also Ted Wisenhunt show, so I could write Ted Wisenhunt, and I could then search for gallery, and all the ones that have a gallery tag would pop up. Also, the I is the information. So just like on Flickr with the EXIF info, all your information comes up with the file size, dimensions, the type of camera used, date taken, also your exposure time and aperture, those sorts of things. And on the top right here, you can just X out of that if you want to see more of your photos. You can also go through, and if your camera does not auto-rotate, you can rotate your photos. You can also highlight multiple ones if they need to be rotated, and they will all rotate together. Okay, so now we have imported our photos, and it'll be time to search for the ones we want for the assignment. So if you double click on an image, a larger one will pop up. And you can use the right and the left arrow keys to go through your images. And if you want to, for instance, this one, there's two that are very, very similar. So at the top here, if you click that, two images will come up side by side. So then you can see them at the same time and pick which one that you like better. And for instance, this one, I like that one a little bit better, that we can tell that she's pointing at something, whereas this one, since she's hidden behind there, I don't feel like that one's as pleasing. So with them in this viewer, it makes it a lot easier. Or if you want to be able to decide completely between two very different photos, do you like the one of the two girls looking at the photo, or do you like the one of the single gentleman looking at that image? So that's a good way to narrow everything down. Okay, So let's say that we like this image a lot. Now we need to edit the image. On the left-hand side here, you will have these basic tools. The first one is crop, straighten, red eye, and so on. So for our crop tool, well, I like starting with straighten. A lot of times our horizon lines or our vertical lines are very off, and you can use this tool. It gives you these guides, and you can just push this slider left or right to rotate your image. So for instance, this one, you can see that these lines along the top aren't very straight, and he looks like he's standing slightly crooked. So I would click straighten, and I can move him just that little bit, and we can use these guidelines to line up our line. Many times on landscapes, you'll find your horizon line is slightly crooked, and that's an easy way to do that. And you would apply that. And then you might want to crop your image. For instance, in this one, I don't like that you can barely see his belt and hands there, and that's being very picky, but there's also then a lot of dead space at the top. So in this drop down, you can select manual, or if you know your end product is going to be a certain size. For instance, you're printing this photo for someone and they want an 8 by 10. Well, then you can crop it exactly to an 8 by 10. For right now, and for most of our purposes for this class, we would be able to do manual because you want to crop it exactly the way you want me to see your photograph. So then you can just click and drag and pick where you want it. And it's nice that it grays out all the areas that you don't see. And then if you hit preview, you can see it briefly as it is, and then it'll go back real quick. And then if you can also, your little handle pop up and you can move this around if you like that size. And I think I'm going to move this over just a little bit here and move it that way to put him a little bit more on that left third of the image. And then you can hit enter or apply, and it'll apply that for you. And if you realize, okay, that's not really what I liked, you can of course do undo crop and step backwards. Red eye, of course, fixes red eye. It does it automatically. For this course, we're not going to be using any flash, or we might at the very end, but hopefully you won't throughout the semester of it, so you won't have to worry about red eye. All these auto ones, I wouldn't recommend using those because it's just the computer telling you how they think your image should look, and hopefully you're telling the computer what you want it to look like, and also showing me what you want your image to look like. So that's pretty much in this pane the features you'll be using. Okay, now we have fill light, which let's move to a different image. Let's see. Here's a good example. So this part of the image is a lot brighter. It has a lot more exposure, a lot greater exposure than the person's head here. So you could use the fill light to brighten everything up. And this really is going to brighten both parts of the image up. Whereas the highlights will brighten the highlights and the shadows will take down the shadows. So maybe we want to drop her more out so we really have a focus here. So that was our original image. So if we do these shadows and bring up the highlights, this part of the image pops a lot more than this, and we focus really on the artwork on the wall. I'll find another image and show you how that works as well. For instance, this one of course, as we can see, is way too dark. So we can use the fill light to bring it up a little bit, and the same thing with the highlights. And then if you want to do a little bit of shadow. So this is with the highlights and the shadows, manually adding contrast to the image. Now also what you can do, if you hit this AA, you can view both images at the same time. So we want to see what the new one is going to look like compared with what the original one did. So we can again do that fill light Add some highlights to it. And now we can see right next to each other what our new image looks like compared to the one we took. You can do the same thing with cropping or any of the other edits in Picasa. And then if you feel like you like this final image, you can hit return and it'll give you that image. Now, the only one in this pane that you will be using is black and white, to turn your image black and white. And again, the same thing, we can bring up two of these, turn an image black and white, and then see if we like the black and white version compared to this version here. There are all these other ones, sharpen, sepia, film grain, soft focus, but that's more of a manipulation type tool. And we're not going to be dealing with manipulation. I'd like to see the images you can take with the camera and just crop, worry about contrast and sharpening and that sort of thing. And then the same thing with these. There are a lot of Instagram type filters that you can add to them. And we're really not going to be working with those. But they do exist if you want to use this software for the photos that you take. Same thing here, it makes a comic book type effect if you wanted to do that. Okay. So, also, once you've edited a photo, down here you can add a star to it to know we've edited it, we like it, that's one of the photos we want to submit. Same thing here, I edited this one, I can star that one. Let's go back to let's see, that was the one I cropped, so we're going to star that one. So now we can go back to the library, and you can see this little star in the corner. You can do, and you can also do it from this pane. You can select certain images and then add a star if you want. And now that you have your photo starred and edited, you can do Edit, Select Starred. So now as you can see, only the starred ones are highlighted. And this is just something to make the end process quicker. You can, of course, if you know which ones you edited, select those individually. And then we're going to do File, Export Picture to Folder. Now you'll pick exactly where you would like that photo to go. So I'm going to do Desktop and a new folder, and this is Assignment 2, Create. I'm going to choose that one. You're going to use the original size. You always want to keep your photos as large as possible because you can always make them smaller. You can't make photos bigger. If you were putting these on Facebook or on the internet and you wanted to save time uploading, or you're limited to a certain size amount or amount of space, you could make them a lot smaller. You always want your image quality to be maximum. If you wanted to watermark these, which means putting your name in the center of them so no one can download them from the internet, you could do that. But we're really just worried about the title of it and where we're going to put them. So you would export them, and you can see down here they're exporting to folder. And then from there you would take those exported, edited images, upload them to Flickr, just like you would for the rest of your assignments. And here we are. We can have the images outside of the Picasa software to put on Flickr.